Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Chyron's Toolbox webinar. So before we get started, just a quick round of introductions. I'm Ileana Morales, Product Marketing Manager here at Chyron. Joining me today are Michael Schmidt, Product Manager for Toolbox, who will walk through what Toolbox is and what's new in Toolbox 4. David Randall, Solutions Architect, will take us through real production workflows and a live demo. And Jacob Brenke, our Marketing Operations Manager, who will be monitoring the chat and collecting your questions. So as we go, please drop your questions into the chat at any time. We'll address them during the live Q&A at the end. One quick housekeeping item, if you haven't registered for the webinar, we've shared a link in the chat. You can fill out that form to get access to a free 90-day trial of Toolbox. So here's how we'll spend our time today. First, I'll set the stage by talking through the desktop to broadcast challenge. So why getting computer-based content to air quickly is easy, but getting it there cleanly and reliably is where productions run into friction. Then Michael will introduce Toolbox, what it is, where it fits in a workflow, and what's included in the latest Toolbox 4 update. After that, David will take us into real production workflows with a live demo. And finally, we'll wrap up with a live Q&A moderated by Jacob. So who is this webinar for? Well, this webinar is designed for real production environments, where you don't just need to see desktop content, you need it to be broadcast safe and dependable under pressure. So this is a natural fit for broadcast and news operations like control rooms, live desks, and newsroom teams that need to bring web sources, rundowns, maps, social content, and clips to air quickly without surprises. It's also built for remote and distributed production teams like hybrid crews, REMI-style workflows, and home studios that need professional outputs without adding operational complexity. And more broadly, this is for workflows that require desktop content to be reliably on air, meaning it must be fast, consistent, and operator-proof, regardless if you are using SDI or NDI to feed the rest of your production chain. So if your show depends on what's on a computer screen, Toolbox is built for you. So now that we've set the stage for why desktop content matters, let's zoom in on the reality teams are dealing with every day. Because the challenge, again, isn't getting content onto a screen, it's getting what's on that screen to behave like a reliable on-air source. So here's the reality of modern production. Content is everywhere, and more often than not, it starts on a computer screen. That might be an operator workstation, a web browser with live sources, stats, and analysis tools, a rundown, social feeds, or a video call with a remote guest. And increasingly, the people driving those sources aren't even in the same building. They're remote operators supporting distributed workflows. So the desktop has effectively become a core production surface. The challenge is making all of that desktop content behave like a dependable on-air source. Not something you hope works when you take it to live. So here's the gap we see every day. What's on screen isn't automatically broadcast safe. On a desktop, you're dealing with inconsistent formatting like different windows, different fonts, and UI elements you never intended to show. Then you get the classic surprises, aspect ratios that don't match the show, framing that shifts, and something that looks fine on a laptop can still break on air. You also run into branding and safe area issues where bugs, graphics, or lower thirds fight each other, or key information ends up too close to the edge. And once you take it live, sync and latency become real risks, especially when sources are remote, routed through software, or moving between systems. All of that lands on the operator in the moment, meaning more steps for them, more judgment calls, and more pressure exactly when you want things to be simple and repeatable. And this is where it gets expensive, not always in dollars, but in risk. When desktop sources aren't broadcast safe by default, teams end up adding extra gear and workarounds just to make things usable on air. And when anything changes, like a window shifts, a browser updates, or a call drops, operators are forced into real-time fixes like reframing, cropping, adjusting audio, and troubleshooting. That's the problem with traditional capture approaches in live production. They may work in a test, but they don't hold up under pressure. Live is unforgiving, so desktop sources need to be predictable. The result is an inconsistent on-air look, not because teams aren't skilled, but because the workflow relies on last-second human intervention. And under live pressure, that's when mistakes happen, like the wrong window, bad framing, a missed cue. The hidden cost is that desktop content becomes a variable when it should be controlled and repeatable. So that's the problem. Desktop content is everywhere, but it is not automatically broadcast safe. And the hidden cost shows up as extra gear, last-second fixes, and more risk under live pressure. That's exactly why Toolbox exists, to ensure that desktop content can be reliably used for on-air broadcasting. So our promise is simple. Toolbox is fast, so you can get sources to air immediately. Clean, so what viewers see is framed and formatted the way you intend. And controlled, so the output stays consistent and dependable, whether you're feeding SDI or NDI into the rest of your production chain. And that's the production difference with Toolbox. It's not just capture, it's capture with the control of live production demands. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael to break down what Toolbox is and what's new in Toolbox 4. So take it away, Michael.
Thanks, Eliana. So now that we've framed the challenge, let's talk about the solution. So what Toolbox is, where it fits in your live workflow, how it makes desktop content truly production ready. First of all, what is Toolbox? Toolbox essentially is a small application that you can install on probably every kind of desktop computer. But it is a desktop production multi-tool. So it is built specifically for production teams. It's not a general purpose screen capture application as you know it from, I don't know, Paint or any other pre-installed applications. Our goal is simple. Take content that already lives on your computer and make your desktop behave like a reliable on-air source inside your production workflow. Therefore, Toolbox does that with 3 distinct core modules that cover the most common desktop to air needs. First of all, the grabber. The grabber allows you to capture any region of interest on your screen. You can also grab an entire application or a full screen and then send this to your output to production via SDI or NDI. The second use case is the VLC player integration. So we integrated the capabilities of the VLC player, and via this solution, the Toolbox turns your desktop into a codec agnostic clip server, routing clean playlist playout to SDI or NDI without the player UI going to air. And then the third one is pretty interesting because while the first ones, the grabber and the VLC video player, focus on your desktop and sending your content to production, the return signal allows you to send a production signal directly via SDI to your desktop, to the Toolbox, and then the Toolbox converts it into a webcam source that can be used by any kind of collaboration tool like Teams, Zoom, or Meet. And this way, remote guests or show contributors get a true return view and can actually contribute to the show. So different use cases, but instead of juggling point tools and workarounds, Toolbox gives you one production-ready workflow for capture, playout, and contribution. So built for live production. And then the next question is, it's Toolbox 4 that we're talking about. So there are obviously earlier versions out there. And the question we asked ourselves is, why does Toolbox matter still today, or does it matter? And we also asked our existing clients that. And the answer is clear, Toolbox matters quite a lot. First, desktop content has become mission critical. It's where browser sources, analysis tools, clips, and calls originate. And it's showing up in more shows than ever. Second aspect that is very important for most of us is teams are getting leaner. So there's less time for multiple workarounds because there are fewer people available to manage the different fragile sources. That's why workflows that are fast, consistent, reliable, and repeatable matter more than ever, especially under live pressure. Therefore, the good news is that Toolbox is back. It's been monetized, it's actively maintained for today's environments and also going forward for future environments. The point is simple. Desktop production is no longer optional, and teams need a tool that makes it reliable on air. So let's have a closer look at what's new in Toolbox. First of all, and I think this matters for at least for your IT security department, is Toolbox is now compatible with Windows 11, which is important because a lot of teams are standardizing on current operating systems and want tools that pass IT scrutiny. As you know, Windows 10 is, let's say, end of life, so we can guarantee a secure application that runs under Windows 11 and whatever comes next. Because, and that's the second aspect, we are actively maintaining and supporting the product, always with a look ahead going forwards. What are the next challenges you are facing? And I think it's very important for you that you know this is not a dead end, and the tool is still developed and supported also in a year or whenever in the future. When we had a look at the toolbox and we wanted to update it, we also had a closer look at the different modules, how we can improve it, and what could be a game changer for you. So from a production standpoint, one of the biggest upgrades we made to the toolbox is that you can build up to 4 grabber scenes now in advance. That means you can pre-stage the capture views you know you will need, and then switch quickly between each and every session, instead of rebuilding sources live with your backgrounds or overlays or the other capabilities that we have in the toolbox. When we modernized the entire UI of the application, we did not just focus on a cool and shiny look. Of course, it is cool and shiny, but we also focused on a very intuitive UI, because I think this is what matters most nowadays. We need a tool that everybody can learn pretty quickly, and that does not, you don't need weeks or months to learn the essentials of the tool. We also added some, let's say, nowadays standards like full HD support for output and input. And when we had a look at our deployment options, we decided Toolbox is a very flexible tool, so deployment should be flexible as well. So you can run it as a software only if you think you already have performant hardware and you just need the correct application. You can also select or ask us for a recommended SDI card where we can support you with, or if you think, hey, I need a complete turnkey solution with a performant rack unit, we can help you here as well. Coming back to the Toolbox use cases. So when teams try to make desktop content on air reliable, they usually end up stitching together 3 different categories of workarounds. And Toolbox consolidates those into one production-ready toolset. The first is the capture or scan conversion workaround. A lot of teams are relying on a single-purpose capture device, and then an operator has to fiddle with cropping and framing and aspect ratios to make it look consistent. Toolbox replaces that with a grabber, which gives you a production-ready capture workflow with multiple prepared scenes. The big difference here is the repeatability. So instead of one predefined zone, you could grab up to 4 ready-to-air desktop sources and switch between them cleanly. This actually turns the Toolbox into a switcher as well. That's faster, and also it reduces the live risk. The second workflow is the clip server workaround that we have with the VLC plane. In many workflows, playback is a separate tool, and then you need routing gymnastics to get it into SDI or NDI while keeping the player interface off-air. Toolbox replaces that by routing VLC playlist playout as a proper output source. So an operator can roll clips quickly from a playlist, and what goes to air is the content only, not the software UI. Actually, and we will see this later, actually you can also minimize the entire application on your desktop. And Toolbox does everything by itself in the background, while you can use your computer as you like. And the third workflow is the remote guest and return video workaround. Today, that often means you have to have multiple apps, virtual camera drivers, or you decide a compromise for screen sharing, and all of it doesn't feel like broadcast. Toolbox replaces that with a clean, repeatable flow, where your return signal becomes the conferencing camera source. In other words, you select the return signal inside Toolbox. The return signal is the signal that comes from your studio. And then your remote guest can see this signal within its Teams Meet Zoom application, like a camera input, which makes the experience much closer to a true on-air interaction, because people can actually see and respond to what happens on air at the same time. So the takeaway is simple. Toolbox is not just a capture utility, it replaces a patchwork of tools across capture, playout, and contribution. And it makes the desktop behave like something you can trust in production. And when teams look at getting desktop content to air, it is easy to assume that all capture options are basically the same, but as we all know, they are not. So consumer and IT capture tools are usually built for recording, screen sharing, or streaming. They can work in a pinch, but they are not designed for repeatable control room workflows. And they tend to increase operator risk when things change live. And on the other hand, low-cost scan converters can solve a single conversion problem, yes, but they are often one-click devices. You gain a box, but you do not necessarily gain the control and flexibility you need in modern production. Toolbox is different because it is built specifically for production teams. It is designed to make desktop content on air reliable by giving you speed, consistency, and control in a single workflow, not a patchwork of workarounds. And now I think we all want to see how this looks like in action. So I would like to hand over to David.
Thank you very much, Michael. Let me go ahead and present my screen, and we'll get started. Okay, here we go. So we're looking at the desktop, and as Michael said, Toolbox is a suite of digital tools. I like to call it a digital Swiss Army knife. And the power of Toolbox doesn't come from just one particular tool, but it comes from using the combined tools in the toolkit to go ahead and achieve some truly impressive results. So we see here in the upper corner, I have my little Toolbox application. And for those of you who are long-standing Toolbox users, you notice that for the first time now, we can undock this from the upper right corner. This was a feature that some of our oldest Toolbox customers have been asking for, and we're happy to deliver it. And here, once we have our palette open, we see our basic tools. We see the grabber, return signal, the VLC integration. We have a preview window that can be configured so that we can visually check our output. You see we just have this color bars to tell us that we are not sending anything out right now. And I'm just going to put this down here for the moment. And then we have a setting sections where these various modules get configured. But let's start with the grabber tool. So I have a web browser, and I'm just going to pull up here a couple of windows with various types of content. And here we're going to see how we go through the process of actually setting up and taking these things to air. So I'm going to go to the grabber, and I want to create a new grab session. So I'm going to come to the upper corner. You see we have this little plus sign. You're going to hit that. And now you have the option to choose a specific region, to choose the output of an application, or to grab the entire screen. For this, how I'm configured, I'm going to be choosing a region. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to click and drag across the section that I want. And you notice that as soon as I do, several things happen. One, we're getting a preview of it here, and we start to see some dimensions of this source with an overlay in pixels. And then around the source, I'm getting this gold box. And here is my chance to go ahead and adjust my edges and margins so that I get this just the way that I want to. And I have the option to fit this automatically to screen, which is very useful if you're using smaller content. I can also center this, right? And now I can just simply grab this and move it around, right? But obviously, I don't necessarily want to take this source over black, right? I want to add some things. So now we have used the grabber function, and notice that this is completely live, right? As I scroll here, we're seeing the output live, and we're seeing good color. We're seeing clean lines. We're seeing the kinds of things that an inexpensive scan converter really can't deliver. If you've ever used one, you know colors tend to be washed out. There's a lot of vibration and things like fine detail. And of course, we know how to make output look good. So for the first time, desktop sources can have a parity with sources that are in your traditional broadcast chain. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to choose a background. And here we're going to be able to choose, I'll just choose a source here, like this. And I want to turn this overlay on, right? And now I want to come back to my session, and let's make the session active. And now you see I've got a background, and I've got this. I can go ahead and scale this up, so I can adjust this to be the size and the position that I want. Now let's do something else. Let's use the overlay function, and I'm going to go ahead. I want to choose a logo here. So again, here's my logo. I'm seeing size in pixels, and I can just grab this and just position it where I want to. And when I'm ready, turn it on. And now all of this is streaming out over an SDI or NDI connection, right? So this is the power of the grabber. It's not just in the individual tool, but it's how the tools work with the individual features. For this composite, we are using a live screen grab. We have also done scaling. We have also done compositing over a background and keying with a logo on top. Now, this is our first session, and Grabber allows you to have up to 4 and then switch between them. So let's do that. Down here, I have, this is just a social media feed from a social platform, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start a second session. And again, I'm going to just choose region. And I'm going to choose this right here. And again, we're seeing the output. And I can do all the things you saw before. I can choose a different background, and I can choose different logos to dress this up. But I'm just going to go ahead and just leave this as it is right here. And now you see, if I look at region 1, we have our little red dot, which is telling us that this is still what is going out over our connection. If I want to switch, I have 2 ways to do it. I can choose to make this active, and now we are switching live to this other source. Also, if I come, notice if I come to the side, I have some options here, right, that kind of pop out on this little menu. And one of them is just this big little this switch here. So I can go ahead and use this to instantaneously switch between these various grabber sessions. Now I'm setting up 2, we could set up 3, we could have a 4th one. So this means that when you are using Toolbox for social media, for elections, for weather, sports, as part of a podcast, whatever your particular type of content is, you can set up this content and you can use Toolbox like a switcher, as well as a scan converter, as well as a compositor, a scaler. So I hope you're starting to see how all of this comes together. Now, we've been dealing with the world of browsers, but let's kind of move over. And again, I'm just going to stop these. Notice that when I click here, I do get a modal dialog box that comes up that says, are you sure? So it's a nice piece of protection to make sure that we're not going to accidentally take something off there that you need. All right, so let's close these down. And now let's talk about moving video. So I'm going to move over and talk about the VLC section. Right? If I launch this here, we see we have some controls for volume. I can adjust delay. If I launch VLC, here, there we go. You see currently I don't have a playlist, but I happen to have one that I made. This is a file-based playlist, and I can just simply load it, right? And then as soon as I start to play this, we're going to see this, and if I take it, oh, geez. Having a moment. I will take this and it will go to air, right? This allows you to go ahead and have lists of graphics that are taken, your video, and when I take it down here, let me close the program and relaunch it here. The nice thing is that this will go ahead and allow me to have my video run. There we go. There we are. And now I can simply close this window. And now I can go, I could be working in the grabber, setting up new content. I could be doing other things while this plays out to air. So this allows you to integrate not only websites, but also any type of content that VLC can support, which you know is quite a bit. In addition to terrestrial video, it can also do things like bring in streams as well. So you have the power of VLC, but contained within the power of Toolbox. I'm just going to turn this off. There we go. And now you see we've stopped and we're not sending anything out right now. And for the last section, return signal. This is something that is a very powerful feature, but it's very difficult to actually show. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you a session that I set up and pre-recorded with myself, and I'm going to tell you what's going on. So here we are. I have set up this Google Meet. So this is a live video conferencing session, but this will work with Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever your application is. And we notice that we have a Studio 2 shot here, and this has been set up using the video return feature. So the signal is being routed in from a workstation here in my office. And we are seeing that signal being passed into our live chat as a webcam feed. So this means now that the reporter here, as well as myself, can see and hear the studio. We've configured the settings so we're going out over NDI. And you see our format here is 1080i 5994. We also support progressive, which is a new feature. And down here at the bottom, we have a status indicator. And this is very interesting. This is a dynamic slider which moves as Toolbox is monitoring the latency of the video signals that are coming into it. And it's basically a visual indicator of the stress that the system is under. As this slider moves more towards the yellow, you know that the system is being stressed. We're in the green, so we are looking good. Okay. So let's go ahead. Now we have things coming into Toolbox, but we're not sending anything out of Toolbox. So let's go ahead and use it to configure what it is we're going to send back to the studio. So for this, I'm going to use the grabber tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select the grabber. And we're going to start by just sending out the reporter. So I'm going to choose the region, and I'm going to select the reporter here. And now we see I'm previewing her, so I can make these adjustments to make sure that she's framed up the way I want to. I can send to her and do all the things that you saw me do with the grabber tool before. And as soon as I send it out, we see she is now being sent, her audio, her video is being sent out, the signal back to the studio so they can see her and hear her, right? But just like the grabber tool earlier, we can have multiple regions. So I can set up a second region, and this time I'm going to choose both myself and the signal that's being sent. And I'm going to use the same features that you saw earlier. I'm going to have a grabber session here. Now I'm going to go ahead, you see there I am waving to myself. I'm going to go ahead and choose a backplate. And I'm going to position this so I can go ahead and get this on screen the way that I want to. And I'm going to use the overlay feature to put some content over top of all of this, right? And you see there we go, and I'm scaling it down and putting it into position. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to hit overlay. And now this is going to put my logo on there. And now all I need to do is just send this out over SDI or NDI. And now everyone can see and hear each other. We are using Toolbox to essentially complete the cycle, complete the circuit from the studio into Toolbox, mixing sources as a webcam input, and then back to the studio. So I hope this has given you a little taste of just how the individual tools in Toolbox really work together to add up to a cumulative source that is really much greater than the sum of its parts. And with this, I'm going to stop sharing, and I will turn this back over to Jacob. Jacob?
Thank you, David. Really appreciate your comprehensive breakdown there of Toolbox and all the information that you were able to share today. Before we get into our Q&A portion of today's webinar, we wanted to share a few things that we've been hearing consistently as we've been talking with customers and bringing Toolbox back into more conversations. First, there's a genuine excitement that Toolbox is back and supported. Teams want confidence with the utility they rely on every day is actively maintained and supported, not something that they have to babysit or work around. Secondly, customers describe it as broadcast quality, but easy to operate. And that combination really matters now more than ever, because these tasks often happen under live pressure, and you need something that looks clean on air while still being simple in the moment. Another thing we've been hearing is that there's an appreciation that Toolbox replaces multiple point tools with one predictable workflow. Instead of stitching together capture, playback, and remote contribution workarounds, teams can standardize on one single approach that behaves consistently. And finally, deployment flexibility comes up very often. Some teams want software only, while others want a turnkey one rack option. Either way, the workflow stays the same, and Toolbox scales to the need without adding complexity. At this time, we'd love to be able to open this up to a Q&A portion of today's webinar, as we have some that have been emailed in from people who cannot join, but we would love to be able to hear from you guys first. And if there aren't any questions right now, there was one that I think Sean Davis just messaged in. He says, does Toolbox only run on Windows?
Yes. So far, our Toolbox only runs on Windows. Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Another question that we had emailed in was regarding time savers. What's the fastest you can go from I can't have it on my screen to it's clean on program? And typically, what would slow you down?
So if you have it on your screen, actually the Toolbox is or can be seen as a desktop production tool that allows you to bring content from your desktop to the screen super fast. As you've seen also in David's demonstration, Actually, the Toolbox auto detects applications that are currently running. So if you would like to share an entire application, it's just a double click away. If you set up a new session, one double click, you can activate it, and then within 5 seconds, this session would be on air. Of course, if you want to adjust it and create your own composite, it depends on how fast you are and what your expectations are. But basically, I would say it shouldn't take you too long. Definitely less than a minute to prepare your setup and your region.
Awesome. It looks like Sean had a follow-up question here. Does the region grabber have snapping options? Like, can the selection snap to the edge of a video source or browser window?
You mean create a snapshot of your online source, or did I not get it?
I think I can take this one, Michael.
Yep.
When you use the when you set up a new grabber session and you choose region, it will assume that you want to manually adjust the region, so you will get that gold border around there so that you can make manual adjustments. However, if you choose app, if you choose application, and you just choose which window you want, then it automatically snaps to the window confines, and then you're just broadcasting that entire window. So you have the option depending on which you choose.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I didn't get the point. Yeah, but that's right. So if you choose, as David said, if you choose an application, you can actually even resize the application or your browser window, and then Toolbox just sticks with the application.
Thanks, David and Michael. We got another question in from Steven here. He's asking, how much latency does this application induce?
Well, that's a tricky question. It is not a lot. It is quite fast, but I would have to look this up, to be honest. David, do you have this at hand?
I don't. I don't have the documentation in front of me, but it's certainly something that we could look at. I will tell you that the latency is incredibly low, and you can monitor it with that as I showed you, so you can see. And of course, this is dynamic. So if your sources, especially if they're internet sources, you start to get net congestion or what have you, you will see that reflected, and Toolbox will tell you that these sources are lagging. You can also compensate by using the delay controls as well.
Yes, Reinhard, did you have any input?
Yeah, just an additional add-on for that. I'm Reinhard. I'm the sales guy for Central Europe. Sitting in Munich on the central station at the moment. That's why the picture is a little bit funny. But we use, or customers here in Germany use Toolbox for the main news show, the Tagesschau, every evening at 8 p.m. since ages, and they lately the new one. So they use it with the return signal, and there's almost no delay, so they can use it for what we call a schalte. That means for an interaction with the external journalist, and this is fast enough, so you don't have any issue with that.
Wonderful. Thank you for that input there. Our next question comes in from Vladimir. He asks, do you have a list of supported vendors for SDI breakout cards, and what do you recommend?
Yes, we have. At the moment, we're working mainly with DeltaCast, and we're also supporting Blackmagic cards. But we can send a list of supported cards, of course.
Great. Our next question comes in from Jennifer. She's asking, can you integrate other equipment into Toolbox, like a graphics computer? Does it have to be a Chyron product only?
Do you want me to take this, Michael?
Yeah, please, David.
So the nice thing about Toolbox is that you have the option of both SDI and NDI. So anything that could generate SDI or NDI could potentially be an input source. You do not need to use a dedicated Chyron product. I'm also seeing some questions about hardware, and this is an important point. Toolbox itself will scale to your needs. So if you already have hardware, if you already have the card you need and you just need the software, then you can just get the software from us. If you want to purchase hardware for it, we'll help you with recommendations. But if you want a solution, we have a very robust 1RU rack, dual power supplies with the proper graphics and video cards that's been tested. We add it to the software, and now you have a full turnkey solution. All you have to do is put it in, fire up the software, and you're ready to get started. So we can kind of work with you in whatever level you want to start integrating Toolbox.
Thank you, David. Looks like Vladimir has a follow-up question as well. He's asking, have you considered an option of ripping streams directly out of most commonly used sources like UNTV, NATO TV, YouTube, X, NASA TV, etc., bypassing capture and rendering streams directly?
No, we have not. Not at the moment. I'm not sure if this would, let's say, fit into the philosophy of the Toolbox, because the idea of Toolbox is that it can work with any kind of source all the time, and the more complicated we make, the more complicated it will be to maintain. So at the moment, you're relying on your desktop sources that you have there.
Thank you, Michael. David, going back to your follow-up on some of the hardware deployments, Stephen is asking, can that turnkey solution also have an option for ST2110 environments?
Yeah, that's a great question. Michael, do you want to take it? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, all I can say is 2110 is something that we have on the roadmap. Yes, it's not done yet, but we have it on the roadmap. Let's say we endeavor to have it until the middle of the year. But we are at the moment, we are also, let's say, working on the roadmap and change it every day based on the feedback that we get, and yeah, all the needs we hear from you guys. David, anything you want to add to the 2110, please?
Just that, 2110 is really sort of the next step in digital, and at Chyron as a company, whether it's our 1RU hardware or the 3RU hardware or our main products, 2110 compatibility is something that is very important and that we are working to support globally across all our products.
We had one more question that was sent in regarding what's new or what is the value of switching back to Toolbox. The question was, we used Toolbox years ago. What's meaningfully different now that would make us upgrade or bring it back into daily use today?
So I think the most important point is a fairly unsexy point, but it is a very important point, and this is compatibility with Windows 11 and latest security standards. Because you need your environment, your production environment, to be secure and safe. And the older version, the Toolbox 3, runs best under Windows 10, sometimes even under Windows 7. This depends on your setup. So from a security perspective, I would always recommend to upgrade to Toolbox 4. And also, a part of that, a couple of new functionalities and features that we've shown, like the full HD output support, multiple grabber sessions. All of this you will only get in with Toolbox 4.
Thank you very much, Michael. That wraps up every one of our questions that we had emailed beforehand and every question that's been submitted in the chat. So I'll go ahead and pass it back over to you, Ilya.
Thanks, Jacob, and thank you, team. That was a fantastic session. Just before we wrap up today, here are some next steps. So for anyone returning to Toolbox, it is back, modernized, and fully supported. For teams new to Toolbox, share your workflow with us, and we will recommend the right setup based on your sources, outputs, and environment. And if you would like to test it in your own production conditions, contact us or fill out the form that was shared earlier in the chat to receive your 90-day free trial. And when you are ready, our sales team can walk you through pricing, deployment options, whether it is software only or a turnkey system. And lastly, we'd love to see you at NAB Las Vegas in April. So thanks again for joining us.